If you say BMW, you think of luxurious vehicles manufactured in Germany. Furthermore, the legendary BMW M-division is of course impossible to ignore. Almost every BMW model has a sportified, tuned variant in the form of an M performance version. Cars such as the BMW M3, M4, and M5 are impossible to imagine BMW's range without. However, strangely enough, BMW M would have never existed without the American car manufacturer Ford. In the late 1960s, the American car brand Ford was at the top of the world motor racing. Ford's strategy, which they nicknamed the Total Performance Strategy, took a staggering 4 consecutive victories in the world-famous 24 Hours of Le Mans. They achieved this with the Ford GT40, a car at least as iconic as the race itself. Apart from their years of dominance in the Le Mans races, Ford also achieved great success in Formula One, the supreme class of racing. They supplied engines to several teams over a period of about 20 years, when Ford's Cosworth DFV V8 engine made its debut in the 1967 Zandvoort Formula One race. Graham Hill placed his car on pole position during qualifying with a half-second lead over the number 2. This may not sound like a big gap, but in Formula One, this is a world apart. Furthermore, Ford enjoyed success in almost every other series, from car racing in the US to rally racing in Europe. The street version of the Ford Capri debuted in 1970. Not much later, Jochen Neerpasch, who had recently become head of the Ford Motorsport department in the German city of Cologne, came up with the racing version of the Capri. Racing was in Jochen's DNA. He managed to finish third in the 1968 24 Hours of Le Mans. He set to work on the Capri to turn it into a racing machine. The cylinder capacity was increased from 2.6 to 2.9 liters. The interior was stripped to save weight, and the hood and doors were replaced with fiberglass versions. In the end, the Capri's weight was under 2,100 pounds, with a power output of 280 horsepower. This ultimately made Jochen Neerpasch's car one of the lightest and most powerful cars in the racing class, which did not remain unnoticed. Ford won the German Touring Car Championship, the European Touring Car Championship, and completely humiliated the competition in endurance races. At the 1,000-kilometer race of the Nürburgring, the Capri was only slower than the best prototypes of sports cars. And they were not the least. They were the Ferraris with Formula One engines in them. To compete in this type of racing, manufacturers were required to produce streetcar versions of their race cars. At Ford, this turned out to be the Capri RS 2600. A minimum of 1,000 of these cars had to be built, but because of many requests, Ford built 3 times as many. It was the same requirement that forced BMW to produce the brand-defining E30 M3. And the story of that car was much the same. Demand exceeded legal requirements. At the time, street-legal versions of race cars hardly differed from the touring car racers. Besides, there were not as many speed limits in Germany in the 1970s as there are today, so there was plenty of room to practice. While Ford was busy filling its trophy cabinet in Cologne thanks to the successful Capri, BMW was struggling a few hours away in Munich. They were having tremendous difficulties getting competitive with their 2-door coupe. BMW's 2800 CS, that raced in the same class as the Capri, produced almost as much power as the Capri, but it weighed hundreds of pounds more. Ford won a staggering 13 of the 16 races in the year 72. BMW needed and would do something to change this, so they came up with a clever plan. They sat down with Jochen Neerpasch, the man behind Ford's title-winning Capri. They paid Neerpasch a good chunk of money to come work for BMW. Neerpasch himself, in return, brought some of his best colleagues with him to join his team at his new employer. This represented the official birth of the BMW M. Neerpasch, along with his technical director Martin Braungart, launched the now legendary motorsport division at BMW, and the result of their work were immediately apparent. BMW won the European Touring Car Championship right away in the year Neerpasch signed on, defeating the previously mighty Ford Capri. BMW accomplished this with a highly modified version of the 2800 CS, the car that they had lost 13 of 16 races with last year. Yet this season, they'd managed to capture the title with the modified version of the 2800 CS called the 3.0 CSL. The races between Ford and BMW this season were spectacular, and the excitement in the races was restored. Many famous names coming from Formula One drove around in BMWs and Capris such as Niki Lauda, Jackie Stewart, Emerson Fittipaldi, James Hunt, and many others. But how had Neerposh managed to suddenly make BMW's car championship winning? The big jump ahead was mainly down to the 3.0 CSL's bizarre aero kit for its time with a huge rear wing. At the time, the street version of a CSL cost almost as much as an Aston Martin. If you wanted the CSL with the same aero kit as the race car, you had to pay a fortune, paying almost 2.5 times the price of a V12 Jaguar E-Type for it. This kind of gives an idea of how expensive developing the aero kit was for BMW. Ford was unable to rival this because of the enormously high development costs and failed to come up with its own aero kit. The Capri stood literally and metaphorically in the shadow of the BMW. As mentioned earlier, a street version of each race car had to be produced in order to participate in certain championships. What made the street version of the BMW 3.0 CSL special was that it was actually not street legal at all. The large wing that sat on the rear had no approval for use on public roads. For this reason, BMW had to deliver their cars with the rear wing tucked away in the trunk. Customers then had to install the wing themselves when they took delivery of the car. Neerposh's car eventually managed to secure 6 European touring car championships in the 1970s. Neerposh and BMW's project culminated in 1977 when the team managed to fit a turbocharger to the CSL. Thanks to the turbocharger, the CSL's power output went to a mind-boggling 800 horsepower. By even today's standards, that's huge, more than many supercars produced today. BMW had one problem though. They didn't have a gearbox that could handle that kind of power. Ex-Ford employee Neerposh's influence on M performance went far beyond race cars. A 1980 Motorsport magazine article praised Neerposh for how he managed to develop a formula in which he used M streetcars to fund his racing team. And that has been the core of BMW M ever since, turning streetcars into winning racing cars and then making money back from BMW by giving racing shine to some M-tuned special edition streetcars. However, the M-division was actually already born at Ford. Neerposh, in fact, developed his formula at Ford for turning a streetcar into a winning race car. BMW adopted him and his principles, and from this emerged the BMW M-division. The BMW M-division was officially founded in 1972 and initially began with only 35 employees. This number grew to 400 employees by 1988, thanks to its great success in tourer car racing. The current number of BMW M employees is unknown, but a total of about 125,000 people are currently employed by BMW Group. So, the first BMW M car was the 3.0 CSL developed by Neerposh and his team. But as we all know, it didn't stop there. The second M car produced by BMW was the BMW M1 in 1978. The car was produced by BMW for only 3 years, and about 450 units rolled off the assembly line. The car produced by the BMW M division after this point were the roots of the most popular BMW M models today. In 1984, the BMW M535i was presented with a 3.5-liter 6-inline producing 220 horsepower. However, BMW felt that this still wasn't enough and decided to come up with the BMW M5 barely a year later. From the same engine block, they managed to squeeze an additional 70 horsepower, bringing the output of the 1985 BMW M5 to 290 horsepower. Another year later, BMW thought, what we can do with the 5 Series, we can do with the 3 Series. So, in 1986, the first M3 came off the assembly line, with a high-revving inline 4-cylinder which initially delivered 192 horses with a catalytic converter. In 1989, the power without a catalytic converter was improved to 212 horsepower. This M car could go from 0 to 60 in 6.5 seconds and had a top speed of 146 miles per hour. BMW sold close to 18,000 of these M3s. After the first M5 and M3 proved to be a huge success, more and more M cars followed over the year, such as the E39 M5, the first BMW M with a V8. Not to mention the legendary V10 engine that sat in the BMW M5 and M6 from 2005 to 2010. 507 horsepower in a car you could comfortably carry the whole family in, just bizarre. Later, when SUVs became more popular, M versions of the X5 and X6 were also released both with V8 engines producing 555 horsepower. And to this day, BMW still makes beautiful M performance cars for us to enjoy. Do you like the cars BMW M has produced over the years? And which is your favorite M car? I would love to hear your opinion in the comments. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and checking out the other videos on my channel. You'll probably like those as well. Thanks for watching!